All right, so for today's cyber liability awareness segment, we have Greg Quinn from Agentic Insurance. Greg, thanks for joining us today. We'll get right to the hot topic, which is cyber liability, talking about some things that we can do to mitigate a risk for an insured to minimize their exposure to a cyber breach. So Greg, please continue on there.
Sure. So number one, we were saying was increase email security. So that's turning on multi-factor authentication. So there's a two-part login for your emails. Also, carriers are looking for insureds to put in SPF, DKIM, and DMARC or DMARC. There's a lot of alphabet soup now involved in the world of cyber. So MFA, SPF, EDR, you're going to see these a lot. It gets very technical in nature, but these are what the carriers are looking for. So you want to have the MFA or multi-factor authentication on your emails. We also, our carriers are also looking to see that that is implemented on your user or your privileged user accounts or your system admins, and also on your backups, and then any remote access you may have on your system. So for the backups themselves, carriers want to see those backups separate from your regular system, preferably, you know, in the cloud. They want to see those encrypted, and they want to see them behind a multi-factor authentication. They also want to have regular backups put in place, so preferably daily backups or at least weekly. That way, if something does happen to your system, you're able to roll back and not miss a lot of data and hopefully start continuing operating business as usual. Another thing that carriers are looking at is limiting remote access, or if there is remote access, making sure it's secured. So now a lot of people are working from home. So companies are setting up RDPs or remote desktop protocols. And if you're doing that, we want to make sure that there is multi-factor authentication put on the RDP, as well as putting it behind a VPN or a virtual private network. That way it makes it harder for hackers to get in. So what we like to say here is that hackers are lazy. They're going to look at the easiest way to get into somebody's system. So if they're walking through a neighborhood and a lot of houses have closed doors, but one has an open door, they're going to go in the house that has the open door. So we want to make sure that we're setting our insureds up to have the door closed, locked, and preferably a few locks on there, because hackers are going to skip right over that one because it's going to be too much of a hassle. So along those lines, we want to make sure that insureds are updating their software regularly, using a password manager to manage passwords. That way we don't have employees using password 123 as their password. Insureds should be making sure that they are putting malicious software scans in place. So not just antivirus or anti-malware, but we also want to see EDR tools. Those are endpoint detection and response tools from things like CrowdStrike. Data encryption is a big one. So that way, even if your data is stolen, if it's encrypted, then it's less likely someone can access it. So then you might not have to notify all of the affected individuals. And then setting up training, security training awareness programs for your employees. So those things could be phishing training or social engineering training, because you can have the most secure security controls in place in the world. But if somebody calls one of your employees and pretends to be someone else and says they're in IT and they need your username and password to log in, that employee gives the username and password out, that hacker can now get in. So if you need to make sure that your employees are aware of what could be a malicious email or a phone call, and respond accordingly. Then last but not least, once you put all these things in place, we also want to make sure that you have a cyber policy, because no matter what, you can set up your Fort Knox of an IT network, but if something does happen, you want to make sure you're with a carrier that can respond to a claim quickly, that they've handled a lot of claims, and they can set you up with the right people and panel for these forensics, the legal advice. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle with cyber. So dealing with a cyber insurance carrier that has handled a lot of claims is definitely ideal.
Greg, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sure.